Okay, so first off here, when you're doing 3D for the first time, we need to look at some settings on the computer. I'll show you a couple different ways of doing this, and then I'll show you the one way that I typically use. Alright, so first off, down here, in this area, right around that gear, if you click on the down arrow beside that gear, you have some options there. Our current setting is drafting and annotation. That's what you've been learning to use for the last 12 weeks. You click on the one called 3D Basics, and notice how it changes your tabs up here and changes your screen to extrude, revolve, loft, etc. If you hit this again and change to 3D modeling, it changes it even more so and changes it more options up there. What I want you to do and what we're going to do is we're going to leave this set to drafting and annotation. I just wanted to show you those other options so in the future if you're using AutoCAD and if you're doing only 3D stuff and you're doing 3D continually the whole time, you may want to use one of those other two options. But right now, I want you to keep it set here because there will be times when you need to measure things, when you need to do some normal text, or you need to access your layers. And all of these things are in different positions in different places when you change this to a different tab here. So I want you to use it the way you've been used to, and you've got used to for the last 12 weeks, and that'll be good. Again, if you're out somewhere and you're working a job, and you're using 3D Basics, you'll learn the 3D Basics toolbar if that's what you're doing all the time. But for now, we're going to keep this set to this. What you are going to do, however, is you're going to add in this tab that I have up here called 3D Tools. You do not have that tab. So that tab is a very useful tab to use. To bring that tab up, what you're going to do is you're going to right-click up here on any tab that's up there at the top of the screen. Hopefully you're following along with me. So when you right-click on there, you're going to come down, you're going to see where it says Show Tabs. You hover over top of it, and notice over here to the side there's one called 3D Tools. Yours does not have a check mark on it. Put a check mark on the one called 3D Tools, and it should open up this tab called 3D Tools. Okay, so now we're going to actually switch to that 3D Tools tab, and we're going to look at our first option here. Our first option we're going to look at is called the Box command. So we're going to click on Box. You're going to come out here on the screen, click your first corner of the box, drag down and around to our other corner of the box, and then now notice it still is attached. Well, what this is doing is actually pulling out the height of your box. It's pulling this box up and towards you. You really can't see that like this, but if you click and hold your Shift key and hold your middle mouse button while you're in the command, and then let go, notice you just rotated this up in 3D. Now, it's kind of tough there when you're doing it while you're in the middle of the command. You can't really see what it's doing. But if you click and hold, notice this little thing over here, the user coordinate system, this is called. When you click and hold your middle mouse button and your Shift key, you can see, well, if I can see it, you can see that X, Y, and Z moving around, so you can kind of tell what kind of orientation you're at. So there's my Z pointing straight up, my X and my Y is pointing to the side, and there's my actual cube. So now we can click out there somewhere and make our cube there. All right. So now what we're going to look at is, we're going to look at the view that you see your cube in. So right here, you notice where it says 2D wireframe. That's the view that our computer screen is set to. It's where this looks just like a normal isometric drawing with all the lines in the back of it. We're going to click here. We're going to change this to the next option, which is conceptual. When you change it to conceptual, all that does is it shades the cube in. Now, one thing I always do, because here when you rotate this around, if I look here at the bottom of it, I don't like my grid being on when I'm doing 3D, so just a personal preference for me, I always turn the grid off here, so I don't see that grid pattern there, and it no longer appears. So again, there's the conceptual view. This is the one we use the most often. But let's go ahead and tab through and look at the other ones. So now click back there where it says conceptual again, and go to your next one called hidden. Hidden is really the normal isometric view that shows and hides all those lines you don't see back there anymore. So just the ones that are behind you don't see. And there you could make a good looking isometric type drawing with that. Next, realistic. Realistic doesn't look much different than than conceptual. But later on we'll be using materials and adding materials to things. And then it really does look more realistic like that. Next, shaded and realistic. I really can't hardly tell the difference between the two. Next, shaded with edges is just as it says. It's shaded, but yet it gives you a white line on all the edges of the drawing. The next one, shades of gray. When you're drawing things in black and white, shades of gray really doesn't make much difference. When you use colors, I guess that would. I've never had a need to use it. Sketchy is interesting. Yes, it's very sketchy. I've never actually seen sketchy used for anything, but it does have kind of a neat look. Next, wireframe. Wireframe and 2D wireframe is identical. I don't know why they have two different ones, but they do. And then last is X-ray. X-ray is one that we will use at times. It's when you need to see inside of your object. If you had a different block on the inside of this that was a different color, X-ray could be useful. And here I could just do that real quick. So if I had another block, let's say a red one there, and we come back over here and draw a little block inside of there. You still you can see it, but it's inside of the other one because you're on X-ray. So you switch to a different one. If you switch back to conceptual, you really don't see anything except for these being on the same plane. It gives you some kind of plane chopping there on that. All right. From there, we're going to go ahead and erase this drawing and start with something new. Let's go ahead and we're going to go back to our top view. So we're going to come over here to the little cube and go back to your top view. Now, when you click on that to go back to your top view, sometimes it does things like this, and it'll have a top view that's written in there sideways. If it does, all you do is you come out here, if you didn't notice what I just did, and click on these arrows to rotate that back into the normal orientation, so top is written there, and it says top. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw a box once again. This time, and actually in that view, I'm going to change to an isometric view first, and I'm sorry to tell you that first. Well, to change to an isometric view, you're going to come up here and you're going to click on the little corner of the cube. So that little tiny corner that shows up, you're going to click on it, and that puts you in an isometric view. Now, I'm going to draw using the box command. This time as you draw your box, and mine's going to be a different color, I want you to make this try to make it a cube. Don't use the command to make it a cube, but just try to visually make this so where it's the same height and width and length there in it. Try to make a cube there in that isometric view. Okay? So there's our first one. Next, I want you to move it to the side a little bit. We're going to look at our next option here. So our next option down is we have the cylinder command. Okay, so we're going to click on cylinder. We're going to come here beside it, and before you do yours, just kind of watch mine. I'm going to make two different distinct cylinders. First, I'm going to make one that looks about like that. That one is going to be called the Worcester cylinder. And then we're going to make another one that's called the Edmondson cylinder. So we're going to make a Worcester and an Eddy cylinder. So try to make both there. Yes, every year I insult Mr. Edmondson with the Edmondson cylinder. And definitely give him heck about we drew Eddy cylinders today. Because there you go. All right. So next, go ahead and pick your next option down there, which is the cone command. And again, the same as our cylinders. We're going to draw the Worcester cone. Oh no, we're drawing it like these for now. And we're going to draw the Edmondson cone. Now, with these today, this drawing, when I grade it, you're going to either get 5 points for playing nice with Mr. Worcester, or you're going to get 0 points for not playing nice. The 5 points is, if you make your drawing look similar to mine, drawing the Worcester cone, the Eddy cone, the Worcester cylinder, the Eddy cylinder, you're going to get 5 points. If you don't follow directions well, your grade's going to be a 0, and it's going to have something to the effect of, watch the video and try to make the drawing more similar to the video, and I'll regrade it. But you're going to get points for playing nice and copying what I'm doing, basically. All right, next, the sphere command. The sphere command, it's a little bit different. Obviously, it just draws a sphere. So we're just going to come out here kind of in front of those other ones and draw a sphere. But now, notice when you draw the sphere. If I twist this up in 3D a little bit by holding that middle mouse button and the shift key, by twisting that up, everything else I drew is on the XY plane and goes up in the Z direction. The sphere starts on the XY plane as the circular part of it, but then the rounded part of it goes ahead and goes up and below the XY plane. So that's the only one that's a little bit different, that sticks below the XY plane, but that's how that one's a little bit different. I am going to go ahead and put it back in my isometric view now since I twisted it around a little bit and click up there on my isometric view. Oh, something I just noticed, but that's all right. I'm not in my normal isometric view, but we'll talk about that later. All right, so now we're going to draw another sphere. It's hard to make a Worcester sphere and a Netty sphere because all are created equal, but we're going to make a little sphere on the top of the cone just because we can. So snap to the top of the cone and draw a little sphere up there. There you go. And you're on video probably saying that. So now there's video proof of you saying a big one that's Edmondson. All right, so now, next we're going to do a pyramid. So we're going to click on our pyramid command, come over here beside. The way the pyramid command works is, again, it draws a square on that XY plane. And we're going to draw, again, two of these. We're going to draw a tall, skinny one-ish. I made it a little bit fat, but that's okay. And we're going to draw a short, squatty one. And then we're going to go next to the wedge. The rest of these are really pretty basic. We're going to draw a wedge, again, a tall, skinny wedge. And notice the way the wedge command works. You draw the square shape of it, and then you're pulling up the height of it. And we're going to draw one more wedge. It's a short and squatty wedge. Next, we're going to do the torus. We're going to move this back a little bit. I'm going to come down here in front and do the torus. The torus we're going to do, torus is, we're going to make one that looks donut-ish. So first, we're going to make a Krispy Kreme donut here. So there's a nice plump Krispy Kreme donut. And the other one we're going to make an onion ring. So a skinny little onion ring. So just kind of the difference on how a donut works there. The first circle you draw is the center point of the large circle, the radius of the actual circular part. And then the second one you pull out is the thickness of the cylinder that's drawn around there. Okay? Last but not least option we're going to look at is the polysolid. Now, depending on what kind of scale you drew everything to, your polysolid will look a little bit different than mine, possibly. You can change the height and the width of this. I'm going to zoom in on mine a little bit. Oh, wait. Mine is huge. I drew everything I drew was really, really tiny. So I'm going to actually come out here a little bit and do my polysolid. Actually, for mine, I'm going to do my polysolid a little bit different. My polysolid is so large, as over here's a giant wall like mine. You can put it in behind. If it's a little tiny short thing, put it in front. But we're just going to draw a wall back here kind of behind this. And that's all the polysolid does. It's like it's just, you're drawing a wall. Once you get to the end of it, if you hit enter, it just ends it like that. And there, you could have drawn a whole box all the way around, but then obviously the size of mine, that would have covered all of my objects, so that would have been good. So there you go. There's all your different normal rectangular or normal solid commands. That's it for this drawing. We're going to save that one there. Now, here is one thing when you save it. I always want you saving it in an isometric view. So right now, you know, if we do this, that's not an isometric view. You're going to click up here on the corner of your cube and put this in an isometric view. Obviously, for this drawing, that's probably not the best isometric view. It kind of covers what we see. So then I'm going to click on this back corner. It's going to rotate it. And click it again. We're going to rotate it. And there is obviously the best isometric view for this. Typically, we put this in a normal isometric view, which is the front going out the front side and the right going out the right side. I started mine wrong this hour. I'm sorry. So here we're going to put this in this isometric view where you can see this. Zoom in on it a little bit so you're kind of zoomed in tight there on it. And save that there in your practice folder as solids. After we do our next drawing, you can upload this to Student View. But right there, save this as solids in your practice folder.